So I work for a large international upscale package holiday company. For the winter, our biggest seller is the ski catalog. I work in the sales department, so I'm constantly getting people asking for discounts or people saying that they have a travel blog and they'll review us, blah blah blah. So clearly they deserve a free holiday. Now, we are fairly pricey, so none of this is hardly rare. Today, I get pulled into the office by a manager because a customer that I sold a fairly expensive holiday for was fuming. I expected to be told that I made an expensive mistake, but instead, my manager thought I'd enjoy the whole story and have a laugh about it. I vaguely remember this particular guest. This woman, she had complained it was too expensive and she didn't want any of the cheaper alternatives. She had booked one of our more expensive resorts, and she told me that she would leave the youngest of her 3 kids at home, aged 5, as she would be, quote, too young to enjoy it properly. Again, not too unusual to leave a child or 2 with the grandparents, but I thought she must be a bit mean to leave her daughter for Christmas. As it turned out, she had taken the youngest child anyways, and she smuggled her into the resort somehow. Staff at the resort became suspicious when she asked for about 10 pillows and another blanket and a bunch of extra items. After investigating, she was confronted and she was told she had to pay. Apparently, she argued and she said that I told her it would be fine to take the child into the room, which I didn't. And when they checked the recordings and found out she was lying, she turned on the waterworks, begging to be allowed to stay due to the spirit of Christmas or whatever, as she couldn't afford the extra child's price. The woman threw the biggest tantrum and she starts scream-crying so hard that the resort's general manager eventually allowed her to stay, but only if she would pay about £900, which is $1,200 US, which is roughly 60% of the actual cost, which she did. Now, this should be the end of the story, but it isn't. After coming home, she sends a long email to our head office demanding a refund of the £900 she spent, as the whole experience had ruined her family's Christmas. We, of course, said no. What a sneaky Karen, right? And hey, gotta love it when a Karen's master plan backfires and she has the nerve to act like the victim in all of this. You ruined my family's Christmas. No ma'am, that was all you. Like, maybe next time, don't ask for 10 pillows and an extra blanket and all that stuff. My question is, how did Karen smuggle the 5-year-old into the resort? Like, I sure hope it wasn't an extra large suitcase. I'm just hoping she did the whole blend in with the crowd thing. Whatever the case, again, big mistake on her part, and shame on her for using Christmas as an excuse to save $1,200. So I work in hospitality, and I have been since my teens and 20s. I've also dealt with some huge a-holes in that time. In some cases, management was supportive, but mostly, it was suck it up, buttercup. Don't like it, you can leave. That said, just prior to Christmas, I was checking into a small motel in the middle of nowhere, on my way through to a job site. I had arrived a couple of hours before check-in time and the room wasn't ready. I gave the front desk person my card, and I did all the admin things I needed to do so I could go straight to the room when it was ready. I was the only person there, and it was dead, so I decided to have a 15-minute conversation with the desk person, and then said that I would go have some lunch in their cafeteria and come back at check-in time. As I was eating my lunch, I hear raised voices from the desk area. So of course, I wander out to see if everything was okay, and I see this middle-aged man in a suit yelling at my new friend. When I went closer, I saw that his suit had the logo of a well-known real estate agent. And seriously, the guy was full-on screaming about how his status entitled him to an early check-in. He was basically screaming while my new friend was trying to explain to him that this was an independent motel. They didn't have any sort of reward program and none of the rooms were ready yet because it's not check-in time. He was having none of that and he continued to yell, swear, and stamp around. I felt this was unacceptable, so I looked up the number for the head office of the real estate company and called them. I explained what was happening and then put the phone on speakerphone and held the phone for them to hear how the guy was yelling at the desk staff. The guy's name was also on his suit jacket, just his first name, but it was enough. Let's call the guy Chad. Head office thanked me for bringing this to their attention, and they told me that they would deal with it immediately. I hung up the phone. A few minutes later, Chad's phone rang. He declined the first call, but the phone rang again, and he answered in a very grumpy voice. And I got to watch as the guy deflated. The guy's tone turned from angry to worried to pleading, and his body language changed from "I'm the boss, do what I say" to "I'm just a dog who's been caught red-handed ripping up a shoe." While still on the phone with the other caller, he apologized profusely to the front desk lady, and to his credit, it was a proper apology. He owned his behavior and he didn't make any excuses. He then packed up his stuff and kind of drooped all the way back to his car. Now, I wish I could say that everyone clapped after that, but again, the place was dead, and it was only me and the front desk lady. I was pretty happy with how things turned out almost immediately, to be honest. I got upgraded to an executive room, and the rate for my next booking was significantly lower than I paid before. Instant karma is so satisfying, isn't it, guys? And seriously, good on OP for reacting that quickly, because I don't think many people would have gone that route with calling the head office to have this guy reprimanded. And I'm with OP on this one. I'm so shocked it happened immediately. But yeah, not surprising how some people have that sense of entitlement, right? I'm a big shot real estate agent, blah blah blah. Sure thing, Chad. And this person shares their story of instant karma. This was about 28 years ago, but I can still recall it vividly. At age 16, I had my first job at Circuit City. Around the holidays, the prices for items would change, and it was someone's assigned job to go around and place the new price tags. One day, I was helping out this couple who were confused about a tag on a brand new speaker. Now, I don't remember exactly how it went, but it was something like the tag read $1.99, and it was supposed to be $199. The item was ringing in at $1.99, so of course, I went and got the manager. Well, alongside the couple in the aisle, we all looked at the tags, and that's when my manager starts screaming at me saying, "Are you stupid?" And he had his pointy finger in my face while yelling. The couple eventually left the store without purchasing anything, and my day went on being scolded by him. Even though it wasn't my fault it was mislabeled, he made me feel like it was. He said I should have noticed it, and I must be so stupid. I just took the abuse because I feared being fired from my first job and right before Christmas. My next shift was a few days later, and I was immediately called into his office. I was having a panic attack, thinking, here we go, I'm getting fired, or so I thought. Well, it turns out that the couple I was helping was so disgusted by my manager's behavior that they called the company and complained. I sat in his office with a manager from another location while my manager apologized to me and then left. As soon as he left the room, I was told he lost his job. And to that I say, good frickin' riddance, because a boss who can't hold their tongue and screams at employees in front of customers is a crappy boss. Like, what's that saying? Praise in public, criticize in private. But yeah, mega props to that couple who thought to do something about it too, because a lot of people would have just walked away and left it at that. They're the heroes in this one. And guys, if you enjoyed that post, listen to this next one, where this rich guy gets put in his place. Some years ago, just a day or two before Christmas Eve, a massive and rather unexpected ice storm descended upon our city. A very large chunk of the city lost power for upwards of 12 hours just after lunch, and with a population of 5 million, complete chaos ensued about as quickly as you would imagine. Some sporadic areas of the downtown core still somehow had power, and wouldn't you know it, lucky me, I was working in one of the only hotels that had light, heat, and water. It was a luxury hotel with 350 rooms, 13% occupancy, and enough staff on shift to reflect it. Every department in the building was running on absolute bare-bones staff because A, it was the slowest week of the year in our area, and B, pretty much a third of all the employees in the building were either out on holidays or they lived outside of the downtown core, and all methods of public transportation were down for the foreseeable future. This meant that calling in more people was pretty much not an option, and the majority of people scheduled to come in for afternoon and evening couldn't make it even if they wanted to. I was in the reservations office at the time with 2 other people. We had 2 agents at the front desk, 3 housekeepers in the entire building, 1 houseman, 1 valet, 1 in-room dining server, and 1 chef between in-room dining and the 2 in-house restaurants since they were completely dead up until this point. Add 1 poor bastard of a duty manager, and that was the cherry on top of our crap Sunday, and you have a weather catastrophe dream team. We went from 13% to 100% in the span of 3 hours. It was an absolute dumpster fire. People started flooding in the second they found out we had power. However, because this happened to be a luxury property, the people who could afford to suddenly stay at the last minute for a premium rate just before Christmas were as entitled and insufferable as you would imagine. Once we hit dinner hour, there was roughly a 3 to 4 hour wait for in-room dining, as surprise, surprise, no one felt like going out into the effing Siberian tundra that was forming outside. So they figured they would just order room service. Unfortunately, this was in the days before food delivery services, so it was pretty much their only option of not having to leave the building. Everyone was more or less an a-hole, and they were upset about the fact that the room service order they placed for their family of 8 was taking more than 15 minutes to arrive. One guest, however, particularly sticks out to me, and for clarity's sake, let's call him Mega A-hole. Since we only have 3 housekeepers and 1 houseman, and a good 60% of our available rooms were dirty status since we weren't expecting to be at more than 20% for the next week or so, to say housekeeping was working overtime would be the understatement of the year. They were moving as fast as humanly possible to flip rooms and to try their best to cover whatever deliveries needed to be made. Turn down for us usually starts around 7 or 8 p.m. on a normal day, and it came with a complimentary 250 milliliter bottle of water. For my American friends, that's about a small cup of coffee's worth of liquid. It's barely even worth bringing to the room. It was more of a gesture than anything, like the mint on the pillow. The a-hole in question called around 4 p.m. asking where his turn-down water was. After explaining that they were generally not brought up until turn-down service, which is several hours later, the mega a-hole still insisted that he wanted it now. I told him the best I could do was to put in a delivery request, but informed him that housekeeping and in-room dining teams were extremely behind due to the storm, so it would most likely be a very long wait. Maybe an hour later, with numerous more phone calls from him demanding this, Mega A-hole calls back once again to ask where his tiny free water is, and once again launches into some "this is unacceptable" tirade. I once again launched into my "we do apologize" spiel, and the a-hole cuts me off, and I kid you not, he said verbatim, "Well, do you know how rich I am? I have an American Express black card, and I should be on top of the list of priorities." Now, to give you an idea, this idiot was in our lowest room category on a company discount rate, complaining about his free thimble of water and how rich he is. Meanwhile, we literally have 3 of the richest people in the country in the building, one of them being one of the Shark Tank billionaires, along with pro athletes, musicians, and actors. By this point, I'm 10 hours into my 6-hour morning shift, and I've spent the whole day being screamed at, harassed, and literally being personally blamed for the bad weather, and I'm completely over it. Without even pausing or thinking, I immediately snapped back with, "Well, sir, if it makes you feel any better, all of our other guests that have Black American Express cards have been waiting just as long as you. And let me tell you this, none of them have complained about it. Is there anything else I can help you with?" The a-hole just grumbled something along the lines of he'll be filing a complaint with the owner of the building. And that's right, he said the owner of my building, like the guy was gonna do something about this. I just wished him a wonderful day before hanging up while he was mid-sentence spewing some nonsense about being rich. One of the only other people on shift in my department that day was my supervisor, who was a real one. As soon as I hung up the phone, she proclaimed I did not hear anything. I have no idea about a bottle request. And looking through the call recording log, it seems somehow all of the calls from that room number have somehow been deleted. She said this without even being prompted. There was no turn down for anyone that night, and the a-hole never did get his tiny water. And to that I say, good. And guys, seriously, money doesn't buy class at all. And for that man to think that he deserves special treatment because he has a special American Express black card, like, get off your high horse, sir. And to say it out loud to OP like it's some super weapon, talk about being cringe, right? And I also want to add this, like, just from all the stories I've read, it's always the poorest of the rich people who cry and complain the loudest. Like, I can guarantee you that that dude's net worth doesn't even come close to being a fraction of the other people who were at the hotel that night. Like, some people get a little bit of money and it just goes straight to their heads. So since Christmas and Boxing Day just passed, I thought I'd share a story about the time I worked at a major video electronics retailer. Now, over my time at that location, the return policy went through quite a few changes. Our store now had a 30-day return policy. Also, during the holiday season, we had an extended return policy. Anything purchased between November 1st and December 24th was eligible for return up until January 15th. Now, obviously, items purchased within the 30-day window that would extend past January 15th would be honored to their 30-day period. The exception to this policy was that on December 26th, we would absolutely not, under any circumstances, allow returns or exchanges to happen. This is due to the crowds and crowds of people looking to buy things, and we don't have time to process exchanges or returns. During this craziness, of course, we do get people trying to return things, even though the policy is clearly posted on the front door, as well as the flyers that are circulated. Not to mention, they're printed on the receipts of everything purchased during the holiday season. This lady was one of the people who tried to return something on Boxing Day. However, this story isn't about a meltdown or a freakout at the return being denied during this extremely busy and hectic day. Oh no, this lady was older and likely a grandma. I would put her between 60 and 70 years old. I wasn't the one who dealt with her on Boxing Day, but I was lucky enough to be working alone when she came in to try and return her Christmas-era purchase later on. It was a day like any other day, and it's rare that people are waiting for us to open unless it's a launch day. Actually, it's rare for me to even see a customer within the first hour, and sometimes 2 hours of the store being open. Well, this lady was waiting in the parking lot in front of our store when I showed up an hour before opening. We were scheduled to start half an hour before open, but I like to get there early so I could take care of the alarm, start up the extremely slow old computers to boot up our point of sale system, and also to dip out across the parking lot to Walmart to pick up some delicious iced coffee. We had big metal grates that pulled down over the doors and windows when we were closed. I would let myself into the store and I would close the grates behind me. Same when I popped out again to go across the lot and when I came back. The lady just waited in her car the entire time. She may have seen the posted hours on the door and she was prepared to wait. When 10 o'clock finally rolls around, I opened and I took my position behind the counter and I waited. The woman was in the store a minute after I opened and she comes up straight to the counter. The woman throws a store brand bag with a product in it on the counter in front of me, and she slaps the receipt on top, and she says, "I'd like to return this please, it's a duplicate." Me, unsuspecting, say, "Sure, I can help you with that." I log into the point of sale system to start a new transaction. I pick up the bag with the receipt and I slide a game out of the bag and I unfold the receipt to have a look at it. And this is the uh-oh moment. At this point, I notice the sales from last November, and right now, it's the middle of July. So I tell the woman, "Oh, I'm very sorry about this, but it appears you purchased this item back in November. Unfortunately, our return policy is 30 days, and while we do have a holiday return policy, it only extends until January 15th. That's when the old lady says, "Well, I was here on Boxing Day, but you idiots wouldn't accept returns. You denied me." Me, being surprised at her hostility, say, yes, I'm very sorry about that. It's the only day of the year we don't accept returns or exchanges because of how insanely busy it is, which is also why we extend our return policy through the middle of January. It's printed on your receipt right here. I then show her the spot where it's printed, and she says, "What? You expect me to read all of my receipts? How was I supposed to know?" Hearing her say that, I think to myself, well, yes, I do expect you to read the receipt. Like, how are you supposed to even know if something rang up wrong or if you were overcharged? So I tell her, again, I'm very sorry about this, but this is so far out of the return policy that I'm unable to process the transaction. If it was a week or so past our holiday cutoff, I could make an exception. However, this is 6 months after the cutoff. There's nothing I can do. The old lady loses it and she says, "This is unacceptable. You refused to take my return on Boxing Day, and you're refusing to take it now. I cannot believe this BS. You're all a bunch of scammers, and I should call the cops right now." Internally, I'm thinking, well, what about the other 20 days after Boxing Day that you could have returned the item? Once again, I tell her, I'm extremely sorry that I can't process the return. The computer system won't actually let me do it because the return's so out of date. That's when the woman screams at me and says, "I am never shopping here again. This is horrible customer service. You are disgusting. You just want to rip an old woman off." She then slams her fist on the counter and then grabs the receipt and item, and she screams, "You will hear from my lawyer and the police. They'll be paying you a visit." I just told her that I'll gladly wait for police if she so chooses to have them involved. The woman just storms out of the store. I never heard anything else regarding the return. Oh, and here's the thing. She was also back a week later with her extremely spoiled grandson spending more money. Yeah, I love how she continued coming back there after saying, "I'm never shopping here again," and throwing a huge tantrum. Like, seriously, do people just throw that out as a threat? Because if that were me and I caused the scene to that extent and said those exact words, you'd better believe that I would never show my face in the store again out of sheer embarrassment, guys. But I guess it's different for Karens, right? They feel no embarrassment and feel no shame. They say what they want and do what they want. Several years ago, I was Chief Operating Officer of a mid-sized acute care hospital in a prosperous suburb of a major metropolitan area in the deep south of the US. I'm now retired. One of the things you have to do when you're in hospital management business is to schmooze with the doctors. So for 30 to 60 minutes a day, I would hang around the doctor's private dining room or other places where they would go when they needed a break, and I would listen to what they had to say. Some were good doctors and some were bad, but the one that stood out was a board-certified internist whom I'll call Dr. G. Now, Dr. G was 60 plus years old, he was fiercely independent, and he was one of the few solo doctors who admitted patients to our hospital. Most of our doctors were in large multi-specialty group practices, but not him. He was by himself. And the thing was, Dr. G had more business than he could handle. Not only did he have a huge patient base because he'd been practicing for decades, he was a damn good doctor, so many of the hospital's other doctors referred a constant stream of patients to him. Dr. G also didn't need money. His wife was an anesthesiologist, and they had a huge house, an equally huge vacation house, several cars, and no debt. Their kids were also grown. He never told me how much retirement money they had, but he did hint that it was a buttload of stocks and mutual funds. He was working because he wanted to, not because he had to. His office was only open 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday. He hired twice the number of nurses, bookkeepers, secretaries that he needed to run it, so nobody was overworked or overstressed. That said, one day during the Christmas season, the doctors were sitting around their private dining room talking about what they were giving their office staff for Christmas. The gifts ranged from new office uniforms to free car detailing packages to gift certificates to discount chain stores. Everyone had to admit, however, that Dr. G's Christmas gift was the best. Even though he gave each employee a gift certificate that was in the low 4 figures, that wasn't his best gift, not by a long shot. It was Dr. G's other gift that got everyone's attention. Every Christmas, each one of his office employees got to fire one patient, no questions asked. It didn't matter who the patient was or what they had done to the employee, they were out. The employee didn't even have to say why, although they usually enjoyed making sure that the rest of the staff and Dr. G all knew why. There were some limitations and exceptions, however. For example, if the patient was in the middle of a crisis where care was essential, such as during or shortly after hospitalization, Dr. G promised the employee a rain check, that the patient would be fired as soon as it could be done without compromising their medical treatment. Also, a patient could never be fired if they were terminally ill. The staff understood that they could not fire patients who were so sick that they couldn't keep themselves from behaving the way they did. They could only fire patients who were capable of acting like decent human beings, but they chose to be a-holes, aka the Karens. And this was never a problem because there were always plenty of those. When a patient was, quote, fired, Dr. G would send a polite personal letter to the patient, informing them that he's limiting his practice and they were no longer within the scope of the patients that he would treat. Now, this was actually true, although his letters didn't say so because medical science has no cure for being an a-hole. His office would be glad to forward a copy of the patient's medical records to any other doctor's office free of charge. Now, he didn't suggest any other doctor because, after all, these were the bad patients. If the patient had a small balance on their bill, Dr. G's letter would tell the patient that he was writing it off. His staff would also flag the patient in their office systems and records, so current and future office staff would know to never let that patient come back, ever. That's it. He had 8 to 10 employees, and he could easily afford to do without 8 to 10 patients, out of the thousands he treated every year. So all year long, every time a patient was overly rude to one of his office staff, the staff person could think, in a few months, I'll never ever have to put up with your crap ever again. Dr. G said it was the best morale booster he'd ever used with his staff. It got rid of patients that he himself didn't want to treat, and it cost him practically nothing. Now that's a good boss, guys. Like, allowing your workers to fire difficult customers should be a thing. And what a morale booster that was, to know that your boss cares for you enough and has your back enough to let you fire nasty Karens. And seriously, at some workplaces, giving someone the Christmas gift of being able to fire a nasty person is, in my opinion, way better than a little gift card. Props to Dr. G. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r slash entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r slash entitled people episode, where psycho Karens are running wild in stores, guys, and they're getting taught lessons they won't forget. Guys, go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.